Hi there, we're back to do a tutorial of Write It Out lessons 12 through 15. So what we're working on here is when you have a short answer writing prompt that comes from something that you read, how to organize your writing so that other people can understand it really well. So our direction here says, sometimes when you have a lot to say, you might write too much for one paragraph. Read the example below. As you read, try to identify the main idea. So as I read through this, let's see if you can underline where you think the main idea is, the big idea that the paragraph is trying to get across. If you were a scientist watching elephants on the savannah, you would be able to see many different elephant interactions. For instance, older calves might be fanning their ears, lounging around, and chewing grass. They might start to play gently, sniffing each other with their trunks. You could watch as the matriarch or female in charge calls the herd to the feeding ground. She might be followed by more adult females and young calves. It might be a surprise to you that elephants are led by matriarchs. A matriarch is a wise and experienced mother who leads the herd. The male elephants are loners. They leave the herd when they are old enough to live on their own. So, were you able to identify the main idea of this paragraph, or did it seem like there were more than one? One of the reasons why this paragraph is so long is because it has two main ideas, and I'm sure that you got that as you read it. This paragraph should really be two paragraphs. We're going to answer some questions based on what we read. Read the sentences below. Which sentence best expresses the first main idea? Scientists watching elephants in the field are able to observe many different behaviors. So I'm going to ask myself, was it about being able to observe many different behaviors? Or there's this other sentence that says, watching elephants on the savannah, you might get a chance to see calves playing. So I'm going to see if the whole paragraph was about calves playing. When we read this paragraph, did we only read about calves playing? Or did we mostly read about observing elephants' behaviors? Correct. So this is the first main idea, that the scientists were observing the behaviors of the elephants. So there is another main idea, the second main idea. We're going to read the sentences and see which sentence best expresses the second main idea. A, male elephants do not live with the herd. B, elephants are led by wise female leaders. Okay, so scrolling back up this way, did we read mostly about who leads the elephants, or did we read mostly about male elephants? If you said that we read mostly about matriarchs, the wise female leaders leading them, you are correct. So the second main idea that we read about was elephants are led by wise female leaders. Really, if I look back, I can only find one spot where it really describes much information about the male. So when we look at that, it really wasn't very much information about males at all. Okay? So that was only 2 sentences worth compared to the rest of the paragraph. So that tells us it's really not a main idea. All right. Moving right along, and we'll get rid of this before we scroll down. We got a little wild with the pen there. Okay, so scrolling down again, we're going to go into question number 3. Reread the above paragraph. Where do you think the writer should break the paragraph into 2 paragraphs? Write the first sentence of the second paragraph below. Okay, so scrolling up here, let's read it one more time and see where we would put a break in that paragraph. If you were a scientist watching elephants on the savannah, you would be able to see many different elephant interactions. For instance, older calves might be fanning their ears, lounging around, and chewing grass. They might start to play by gently sniffing each other with their trunks. You could watch as the matriarch or female in charge calls the herd to the feeding ground. She might be followed by more adult females and young calves. It might be a surprise to you that elephants are led by matriarchs. A matriarch is a wise and experienced mother who leads the herd. The male elephants are loners. They leave the herd when they are old enough to live on their own. So where did it really start to leave the idea of elephants behaving a certain way and mention this new idea about explaining what a matriarch is? So even right here where it mentions matriarch, she's still doing a behavior because she calls the herd to the feeding ground. And there's still a behavior here where she might be followed by more adult females and the young calves, right? But really where it starts to go into introducing a new topic is right here, where it says it might be a surprise to you that elephants are led by matriarchs. There's our second topic, right? So let's transfer that sentence down on that blank. It might be a surprise to you that elephants are led by a matriarch. Okay, so this would be our topic sentence of our second paragraph. Scrolling right down, we're going to read a paragraph about giraffes, okay? Since I showed you what to do on this portion, I'm going to give you a couple of hints here, but most of this part would be independent work. So you're going to read this paragraph about giraffes, then answer the questions that follow to revise and improve it. So we're going to look for which sentence expresses the first main idea and which sentence expresses the second main idea. You're going to write each of them there. So if you had to find our topic sentence for the first paragraph, what would it be? If you had to find a topic sentence for the second paragraph, what would it be? Okay, so as we read, we'll look for those two things. Giraffes are the tallest land animals. The tallest giraffe on record lived in a London zoo and was 20 feet tall. Even smaller giraffes have incredibly long necks, up to 6 feet in length, that weigh nearly 600 pounds. Most adult giraffes could look straight into a second-story window. Because of their height, giraffes are browsers that eat tree leaves high off the ground. They can reach many sources of food that are too high for other animals. Their favorite food is the acacia tree, which has sharp thorns, but their thick black tongues aren't affected by the thorns. So thinking here, what was most of it telling you about, the main topic? Okay, so where do we find a topic sentence mostly? If you said the first sentence of the paragraph is the topic sentence, that is correct. So giraffes are the tallest land animals. You're going to go ahead and write that sentence here because that is our first topic sentence. However, the topic did change as we read further down. So it was giving us all types of examples of what they can do because they're tall and they have this long neck, right? But then it really started talking about their eating habits. And you'll notice there was a little transition here where it says, because of their height. See how it's transitioning from the previous idea? Giraffes are browsers that eat tree leaves high off the ground. Okay? And that signifies that now we're going to be talking about their eating habits. So you're going to be copying that sentence here. So feel free to go ahead and underline them now and copy them later, or feel free to pause the video if you need to go ahead and get caught up with writing those down. Okay, so next we're going to be looking at which sentence should begin a new paragraph. Okay, so which one would be a new paragraph? If you said that this second main idea sentence would be the way to begin a new paragraph, you're correct. So again, we would be copying down that sentence here. Okay? When you write, make sure each paragraph has just one main idea. If a paragraph is much longer than the rest of them, check it carefully. You might have introduced a second main idea. Okay, so where you switch topics slightly is where you need to indent and start a new paragraph. Lesson 13, we're going to be writing a good closing. Okay, sometimes we just throw our ideas out there and we let them drop when really we need to add a good conclusion. One of the elements that made Jana's response successful was her closing sentence. She didn't end her answer after she provided two sets of details about elephant communication. Instead, she summed up her response. So here's Jana's closing. Elephants communicate in many ways, and today's scientists study elephants to learn more about what they are saying. Jana followed another important strategy too. She connected her closing sentence to her opening sentences without repeating the opening. Okay, so she did mention the main topics that were in her opening. Let's see what those were. Elephants have many different ways of communicating with each other. I want to show you guys. Her opening mentioned different ways of communicating with each other. Okay, So here she said communicate in many ways. So that's the same idea. It's just a little bit different wording. And when you write, you want to have some variety, but also you want to restate what you talked about for your main ideas. Some you can see, some you can hear, and some are impossible for humans to understand. Okay, one idea in Jana's opening was also in her closing. Which idea was it? So you guys see here, elephants communicate in many ways. Okay, so once we've gotten that transferred there, we're also going to answer question number 2. One idea in Jana's closing is new. Which idea was it? Okay, so we know that this was the one that was repeated in both. The idea that is new in her closing was about the scientists. So the idea that was new was that who does what? Right, scientists study elephants. Okay, and I am going to put a ... there because I am a little bit out of space. If you want to put down what exactly they study, that's okay as well. Okay, so we're going to be trying it, okay? There's more than one way to end Jana's answer. We're going to reread her answer on page 84 and think about her opening. Then we're going to write 2 more ways that she could close her answer. You can write 1 sentence or 2 sentences for each closing, okay? So as we reread Jana's answer on page 84, we'll look for what were her main ideas that she was talking about. Elephants have many different ways of communicating with each other. Some you can see, some you can hear, and some are impossible for humans to understand. Elephants communicate through noises and gestures. If you are watching a group of elephants, you might hear them trumpet to show fear or make rumbling noises to calm their babies. You might see a mom elephant slapping her baby with her trunk as a punishment. They also might make screaming or growling sounds. You might see them twist their trunks together to say hi. These are things you can see and hear when you watch elephants. Elephants also have another level of communication. Some sounds are called infrasound. They are below the level of what people can hear. These sounds feel the way air does when you're going fast in a car with the window open or standing next to an organ that is playing low. Elephants may feel these vibrations through their feet. They can use infrasound over long distances to communicate. They can use it up close too. And they can tell if their friends or relatives are talking. Elephants communicate in many ways, and today scientists study elephants to learn more about what they are saying. Okay, so we're going to think a little bit about how she could close her essay. Okay, I like to use words such as clearly, obviously, in conclusion, overall. Okay. So I might say something like, clearly, elephants and I'm noticing I forgot something right here. What do I need after my transition? If you said a comma, you are correct. Clearly, elephants communicate with sounds behavior and what was that word that they were using? Ooh, infrasound. Okay, so this was our first conclusion that we could come up with. I'm going to have you also pause the video and come up with a second possible conclusion that you can write. So remember, you could start with a word like in conclusion or overall or all in all or obviously. So those are some good starter words, and we just need to sum up that main idea. Now, since you might not be sitting next to a partner unless mom or dad or your siblings want to choose your best one, you can put a little star by which one you think is best. Okay? And then we're going to scroll down to our lesson 14. Again, if you do need to pause because you're getting caught up on your answers, that is fine. So Miles read the same selection as Jana, but he answered a different open-ended question. Here's the question that Miles answered. How did Katie Payne get involved in studying the way elephants communicate? So main question here is about Katie Payne becoming involved. Okay? So we're going to read Miles's answer. His opening sentence is in bold, so we can see it right here. Okay, let's take a look. Katie Payne started studying the way elephants communicate almost by accident. She knew something about animal communication because she had been studying the way whales communicate using low sounds. One day at the zoo, however, she suddenly felt something strange near the elephant enclosure. There was a vibration in the air. She brought a tape recorder to the zoo and recorded the vibrations at low speed. Katie Payne was pretty sure she had discovered an infrasound communication system. Scientists already knew a lot about the elephant communication they could hear and see. They knew that many sounds and what many sounds and gestures meant. They also knew that elephants seemed to be able to communicate, even when they were far apart. Katie's idea that they used infrasound communication interested other scientists. Katie set up the Elephant Listening Project in Africa to record and study the sounds elephants make. So as you can see, Miles's answer does not have a closing sentence. He did throw in some good details, and it looks like he's broken up his ideas into two separate paragraphs, but we need a closing sentence. And remember that our closing sentence should mirror the information in our opening sentence. So our opening sentence had to do with her becoming involved in studying the way elephants communicate almost by accident, right? Okay. And remember that we want to include the key phrase, studying the way elephants communicated as well. So we're going to think of some of those good starter words. I like even though. I like although. But again, I could use those words like clearly. So clearly might be a good one to use. I could also use in conclusion. Okay, so depending on what you pick, you'll have to play around with it and make sure that you mention her beginning to study elephants and the fact that it was by accident. Okay, so I might say something like, even though Katie Payne made an accidental discovery about how elephants communicate, her discovery led to scientists understanding more about infrasound. Okay, so that's one example. You can write a good closing sentence right in this area. So I'll repeat mine once again. Even though Katie Payne made an accidental discovery about the way elephants communicate, her discovery led to scientists understanding infrasound. We'll go ahead and if you need to pause the video here, you can go ahead and pause the video so that you can write your conclusion sentence. But we're going to go on to our little hint. Remember, always when you're closing an essay or a short answer, make sure to try to repeat some of the key words in there, just like we repeated elephant communication and Katie Payne and accident. We repeated those words, but we put them in a slightly different order or a slightly different wording. Okay, and that's what gives it variety. We're going to go on to lesson 14. We're going to talk about revising and improving a weak answer. Okay, so if you look at this answer, first of all, if I got this turned in, I would say, ooh, it does not have enough detail. This person did not put enough time into putting their answer together and describing it well. Even compared to the others, I notice how it just has one short paragraph, while the others had several or a couple of well-described paragraphs. So we can see right off the bat that this needs to be developed more. The next step in learning how to write a successful answer is to try to improve an answer that is incomplete or unsuccessful. So you're going to be helping to make this one better. Reread the sentence, the selection Elephant Talk on pages 82 and 83. So if you would like to go back and rewatch that, you can definitely do that because we read that earlier with Mrs. Frege. So you can review that there. How did Katie Payne discover that elephants used infrasound communication? So this is supposed to be about the discovery of infrasound communication. And we wanted to know how she discovered that. Okay, here's Sean's answer. He tried to answer this question, but his response is weak. Look at what he wrote and then think about what you have learned in this unit about writing a good answer. You will also use the questions that follow to help you revise and improve Sean's answer. Katie Payne discovered elephants could use infrasound at a zoo. She had studied other animals and she was pretty smart. She noticed something weird was going on. She investigated it. It turned out the elephants could communicate through infrasound. Sean has started to answer the question. He mentions that Katie Payne discovered elephant infrasound while at a zoo. He mentioned that she had been studying animal communication. Did he mention which animals she was studying? Nope. However, Sean's answer is very short. He has not included any details from the selection. Someone who had not read the selection would not be able to understand how Katie Payne discovered elephant infrasound after reading Sean's answer. The test scorers would probably agree that Sean's answer is not a successful one. Help Sean revise his answer so that it would get a better score. Answer these questions to help you fill in what Sean left out. Does Sean state the main idea? Is his first sentence or the main idea or a supporting detail? Okay, so we want to be able to say in his first sentence, does it clearly state the main idea? What do we learn about Katie Payne that could form a main idea sentence? For example, what qualities or skills helped Katie make her discovery? Write a new opening sentence here. Okay, so we're going to be double checking right here what she says. Katie Payne discovered elephants could use infrasound at a zoo. Okay. So we really need to notice that she had been looking at animal communication before. Okay, so that should work its way into our topic. Okay, so one example that we could mention is we could say, we know that Katie Payne was very curious because she was studying something completely different at the time, but she heard this strange noise and then decided to come back and follow it up to make some recordings and see if her thoughts were correct. So we could say, curiosity led Katie Payne to follow up on some strange communication coming from the elephants at the zoo. So this is one possibility. Curiosity led Katie Payne to follow up on some strange communication coming from the elephants at the zoo. That's just one way that you could put the main idea. If you can think of a different choice, go ahead and write it there, because part of making your writing better is just practicing being creative with your wording. So making sure to use those main idea words, but just putting it in a creative way. Scrolling down here, I'm going to switch over to my mouse here. Scrolling down, we're going to look at number 2. Again, if you need to pause and catch up, no problem. What else would be helpful to know about Katie? What details should Sean add after his second sentence? She had studied other animals and she was pretty smart. Okay, so we know that she heard some noises that were kind of very low sounds, like the sounds that she had been hearing coming from the whales that she was studying, right? So let's add that in. Okay. Katie recognized sounds that were very similar to what? Okay, so I'm going to put a ... here. And I don't want you to put a ... there. I want you to catch up to where I was, and I want you to look back at page 82, the elephant talk paragraph. And if you look down at the third paragraph in elephant talk, you will be able to finish off this sentence to tell what the sounds were similar to. So like what other animal had she been studying? Okay. For number 3, Sean has told us that Katie noticed something weird was going on. What details could he add after this sentence? So remember that the something weird had to do with like some vibrations, right? Okay. She discovered a new system of communication that the elephants were using infrasound, right? So we could add some information about, at that time, Katie recorded And again, I want you to look back to finish this thought. At that time, Katie recorded, what did she record? So again, look at that third paragraph in the elephant talk essay and make sure to add in information about what she recorded. Sean also says she investigated it, but he doesn't provide any details. How did Katie investigate? Write the new sentence or sentences here. Okay. So after she did that recording, she did make some travels, right? She traveled to Amboseli National Park in Kenya and began to study the elephants there. Scientists had already observed the many forms of elephant communication they could see and hear. They had also drawn conclusions about what some of the behaviors meant. For example, the trumpeting noise that many people associate with elephants shows excitement, fear, or aggression. Okay. Many other behaviors puzzled the scientists. Could infrasound be the key to understanding them? Okay. So we could say she went to where? She went to Africa to meet with who? So as you finish this part of your answer, I want you to make sure that you mention the words scientist, behavior, and infrasound. Okay, so she went to Africa to meet with who? That we're studying what to see if infrasound could. So let's finish that thought up. And then scrolling right down here, Sean's last sentence probably needs to be revised. What details could you add to make Sean's last sentence fit the new information you've added? Write a new sentence or sentences here. So remember how Sean's last sentence said it turned out the elephants could communicate through infrasound. Well, there's not really much information about how she discovered that. So if we actually scroll down here, and you can look back at page 83 in your packet where it starts describing her process of studying them. But you remember in the third paragraph down on that page, it says, to solve these mysteries, Katie Payne founded the Elephant Listening Project, where they stationed all those audio recorders throughout the parks where there were elephants living, and that they were able to start recognizing the different calls and figuring out what they meant based on the elephant's behavior. So we could write some sentences here that would talk about the Elephant Listening Project. Oops, and I need a capital L here. Listening And you would also want to mention in your sentences that you're adding the audio recordings. And then also you could talk about them recognizing different calls and behaviors. And remember, all of this information can be found on page 83. Paragraph 2 and 3 on that page. Okay, so you can look back at that and you can write a sentence or two that would describe a little bit more in detail. Sean also needs a strong closing sentence to go with his new opening. So you want to remember some of those good closing starter words. We talked about them on the previous page. If you could start with one of those good transition words, what were those again? Like in conclusion, clearly, finally, obviously, all in all, overall, okay? And we do need to close with main ideas, right? So once we put that starter word, who are we talking about again? Oh yeah, Katie Payne. And then who did she work with? Worked with who? Oops. to discover that elephants use what? Oops. I got a little ahead of myself there. Use what to do what? Okay, so starting with one of those good closing transitions, talking about who she worked with to discover that elephants use what type of communication to do what? Communicate, of course. So you're going to finish off that sentence to close Sean's essay. And then your final job is you're going to be answering a slightly different writing prompt. So it's based on elephant talk, just like the other people's writing. Sean and Jana's answers were both based on that. You're going to be using the strategies that you practiced. So creating a strong main idea, using keywords in your main idea, adding plenty of description to describe your points, and then adding a strong conclusion. You're going to read this question. We'll read it together, and then you're going to be in charge of setting up your answer. Now, for your answer, you'll notice that it gives you this amount of line space, okay? And I'm looking to see where we are here. So we have a little bit of space here, okay? If you need a little bit more room, that's what both of these are for. Here's the question. It has been more than 2 decades since Katie Payne first discovered elephant infrasound. What have scientists learned since then about elephant infrasound communication? What are they still exploring? Use details from the selection in your response. So this is more from the later part where Katie Payne had developed that elephant listening project. So you'll be looking at paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 on page 83. I'm going to erase this for a moment. And I want to remind you that you're going to re-look at paragraph 2, 3, and 4 on page 83. Woo, crazy pen. And your job is to describe what scientists have learned about elephant infrasound. Okay? And this was after 2 decades. So that would be a really good way to start your answer. If you can kind of pull out some keywords. So like you could add the word after. And you could start off your sentence. Oh, I'm missing my T there. You can tell it's getting on late in the evening when I'm making this and I'm getting tired. Okay, so after. Okay, so you can start out with the word after, and you can say, after 2 decades, scientists have learned more about elephant infrasound communication. So see how that's a good topic sentence there. So you're going to write your topic sentence. You're going to describe your detail sentences. okay? And then you're going to give a good closing. So at the minimum, this should be about 7 to 8 sentences long, okay? And again, rereading those pages that I talked about will be helpful for you. Make sure to use transitions as you write so it links your ideas. You've practiced in class with using the transition list and adding those to your detail sentences. So once again, topic sentence, several details, and a conclusion. Make sure you explain your details enough and make it a really great piece of writing. So we'll be back next time with some other tutorials next week to get you ready for writing your personal narrative after we finish with this informative piece. Have a good evening. Bye.